crew of fascinating people to bring out for you to begin our conversation. First of all, my co-moderator for today, he is a professor of mathematics at the University of California, Berkeley, member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the winner of the Herman Wheel Prize in Mathematical Physics. He's also the author of a fabulous book, the New York Times bestseller, Love and Math, very appropriate for this film. It's been published in 17 languages. Please welcome Edward Frenkel. The author of the original book, The Man Who Knew Infinity, is with us tonight. He'll also be, he'll also be signing copies of the book upstairs in the mezzanine, so please feel free to go up there after we finished our talk and get a signed copy of the book. His name is Robert Campbell. We have two esteemed mathematicians who were creative contributors to the project with us today to talk about the mathematical background as well. Please welcome Ken Ono and Manjul Bhargava. We're delighted to have the composer of the film with us tonight, also happens to be the brother of the writer-director. Please welcome Kobe Brown. One of the most storied and esteemed producers in American independent cinema is with us today. Please welcome Ed Pressman. He is so important that he'll just materialize, I think. Ed'll be here with us in a second. Okay, I guess he's not coming out. So then my next guest is actually, you just saw a remarkable performance from her. I'd just like to welcome the actress Devika Bisset. We are absolutely delighted to have one of the most accomplished figures in essays and film and theater. Please welcome Stephen Fry. And man of the hour, please welcome the writer, director of The Man Who Knew Infinity, Matt Brown. That was meant to be my stool, but I think Ed, oh, there's Ed. Ed Pressman. So I think just to begin the conversation, I think one of the feelings that we all have when we see this film and contemplate it is this, the uniqueness of the central character. And Matt, I'd love to start with you to just talk about your journey with this film. I know it was a long one, and the relationship with Ramanujan as it evolved.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, and I think with any film that makes a journey like this, it has to remain personal to you on some kind of a level, because you keep checking in over the years. Is this still right for me to try to do? It changed for me a lot. I originally was drawn to the human story of this. These are, at its core, I think, is a really incredible human story of a man who, an equation has no meaning unless it expresses the thought of God, and the fact that the person that he has to comfort him on the other side is an atheist and completely out of touch with his emotions. So I thought that was compelling drama just in and of itself, but as the journey has continued, I think this film, I've seen how important it is in terms of this idea that talent can be found anywhere. We don't have universal education. We don't, I just think there's a bigger message with the idea of having to be, what was the core of the story emotionally in terms of the human story. I think we need that openness in order to be able to recognize talent and encourage talent in places that we we wouldn't necessarily expect it. So it's sort of a two thing for me, but and it's grown.
Fantastic. Robert, you've been living with this even longer. Is it satisfying? Is there something about seeing this story that is obviously very personal as well come to screen that's meaningful in a special way for you?
It's enormously satisfying. I remember when we went to see some of the shooting in England. Here I have spent a lot of time all alone in my office working on writing the book. And here I come to this town, this suburb south of London, and there's 100 people on the set doling out meals and calling people to their places to do the performances, and all sorts of roles that I would never have thought of. And they were all putting together the story that I wrote into this movie. So yes, it was enormously satisfying. Fantastic. And then even more satisfying is to see the result done so faithfully in such an important way to the relationship between Ramanujan and Hardy.
Thank you very much. For our actors with us today, Devika, if you want to start us off, and then maybe Stephen. As you read the script, as you began sort of contemplating being part of this project, what did Ramanujan mean to you? Ramanujan, sorry.
Well, when I was at Johns Hopkins in 2010, I was actually in a play called The Mathematician, and it's about this story as well, but it includes ghosts and goddesses and very creative elements that aren't exactly true to the story as you see it now. And when I was in that play, I just thought the story was incredible, and I had no idea that it would actually lead to me being in this movie 5 years later, which is just the kind of thing where you kind of think these things are meant to be in a way. But when I met Matt, I told him that I was in this play and I have experience with the story. And as an actor, I think you can only just hope, or you can't even imagine that the movie that's your biggest movie until date is this wonderful story. So I'm just lucky that Matt took that chance on me.
Good. I accepted the role because it was the biggest role in the script. It was the dominant role, and I apologise for really my character's substance basically shadowing everything. The reason I took this role is that actually I had been working on a script, on the story of Ramanujan and Hardy. When I was at university, a long time before Devika, I read Hardy's extraordinary little book, A Mathematician's Apology, and there's a foreword to it by the writer C.P. Snow, which describes the collaboration, and in a short way, but in a very powerful way, it tells the basic outlines and elements of the story. And I always felt, I'm passionate about technology, for example, and many other things, including artistic things, if you like, and cinema, if you think about it, has made movies about playwrights, poets, composers. Since the technology and the storytelling techniques of cinema began, there have been films about every sort of poetry dimension, every sort of writing dimension. Mathematicians, of course, are artists too, as much as a physicist has to know a lot of things, and a mathematician doesn't really have to know anything, except perhaps number theory, and the rest is his brain, or her brain. In that sense, it's an art. You don't need to know anything. You just need to know the basic construct, like chess or music. It's a closed system. But it's one that...
There's some dissent on the other side.
You're agreeing with me, Manjul, right? Manjul is agreeing with me, I'm glad to say. It's not an insult, it's quite the reverse. When I say you don't need to know anything, so you can't be a chemist unless you learn the periodic table, unless you learn what all these things are. To be a mathematician, you can be a Ramanujan. You can actually just have number theory in your head, the fact that one number, one integer follows another by adding one. And from that, you can deduce a whole universe of extraordinary truth. And San Francisco, which used to be a gold town, is now a silicon town, as everybody knows. And mathematics underlies it completely. So it seems to me that the technology that has created the 21st century is rightly celebrated and supposedly understood, and much of the social work behind it and much of the building of apps and of systems and of forms of communication. But the actual mathematics underneath it is of great interest to those who built this extraordinary world. And Ramanujan is one of the key figures there. And he is a hero to almost anybody who's interested in mathematics. And how exciting to make a film which actually portrays something of the intellectual struggle that he had in his collaboration with Hardy, as well as all the other remarkable truths of his life. And to make Matt has done something, I think, unique. I can't think of any other film that actually presents mathematics and the romance, adventure, and indeed difficultness of it with quite the truth and authenticity that Matt has brought. So congratulations.
Before we turn it over to the math team, the transitional figure in this is our composer of today. Music and math have a lot of similarities, a lot of ways that they intersect, and are very important for the story. I mean, to bind together these sort of different cultural elements, two continents, is no easy task, and music is a big part of that. How did you actually kind of construct that glue?
Yeah, well, we had a lot of back and forth about it and how we were going to approach the music in the West and the music in the East. And I think we were trying to steer clear of just making a wholesale change to Indian music, but it seemed to work, and we found some instrumentation and a palette that worked and sort of spanned both sides. There's a lot of flute and there's some Indian drone elements or string elements that you'd find relatives of in Western music, and I think we found that helped us bridge the gap. And it was just I also had a lot of help from a wonderful Indian orchestrator and arranger and producer, Sai Shravanam, who had done work previously on Life of Pi, and he was instrumental in helping us dial in really authentic elements of Southern Indian music. So it came together well in the end, and I think we're all happy with the result, hopefully. Kobe did a great job with, I didn't know very much about Indian music, to be perfectly honest. Ramanujan and his mathematics, I'm sure they may talk about it in a little bit, was heavily influenced by music, his mathematics, the Carnatic music. And I'll let Manjul talk about that because he actually knows more about it than I do. But it's something that was it had never been done before with Western film, was to really use only South Indian instrumentation, and Kobe made a real point and helped me to understand. Like, so when he was having his haircut, that was on Morsing, and we'd never heard Morsing before in Western film, and there was no sitar, so it was like we were trying to remain as authentic as possible when we could, and these guys and everybody on the film really tried to push for that.
Manjul, do you want to actually speak to that, this idea of the Carnatican rhythms?
Yeah, well, actually, we often say that Ramanujan didn't really have a formal education in mathematics, but he grew up in a very musical home. His mother was a classical Carnatic singer. If people have listened to Carnatic classical music before, you see how mathematically intricate the rhythms are, mathematically intricate the melodies are. And he grew up with that in his home. And a lot of the mathematics he did was listening to his mother singing classical Carnatic music. But even more, he used to sit in his local temple lobby, as we saw, doing mathematics, where the mathematically complex tabla drums of South India would be playing in the background. And he writes how much those drums and the mathematics in those patterns used to inspire him to think about patterns in his own work and write. Some of his best discoveries were done in the temple lobby, listening to classical Carnatic music.
Extraordinary. Edward, I'm going to turn it over to you now for our second half.
All right. Well, I think we probably have, you made a very nice seamless transition now, I guess. So I want to say, as a mathematician, I want to say I was very moved by this film, as I know many of you have been as well, right? It's a very special film. It's a very special film in that I think to me, it's really about a love affair. But not a love affair in the ordinary sense. It's not a love affair between two people, for example. It is a love affair with the truth. But you see that love has so many facets and has so many manifestations. It can manifest as love between two people, but it could also manifest through a work of art, through a film, or maybe through mathematical formulas. And I think it's very important today that we realize that even this most cerebral pursuit, as it were, doing mathematics, in fact, has these dimensions of intuition, imagination, insight, which go far beyond. Somebody's agreeing with me already. That's great. Which go far beyond mere reason and logic. Yes, we need logic and reason to do mathematics, the same way as an artist needs a brush and a paint. But what really drives progress, what really drives the creation of mathematics, is something which we can't really explain. And that's why, to me, Ramanujan is such an important figure, especially in this day and age. Stephen has already alluded to this. We are now sort of in the heart of Silicon Valley, where, which has become such an important center of our life because of creation of new technology, which is invading our lives now. And there is so much temptation now to kind of start thinking about ourselves as these little extensions of our Siri, of our, smartphones and computers. To think of life as an algorithm, to think of ourselves as just sort of this walking bags of particles and collections of zeros and ones. And then you meet somebody like Ramanujan. How did he discover these marvelous equations? Well, Hardy asked him. And he says, well, I'll tell you. The goddess Namagiri comes to me at night, and I see her in my dreams, and she gives me these formulas. So I think that it's important to realize that dimension. It's important for us to remembering our own humanity. That's why I think this film has such significance. But I want to ask. So here at this panel, there are two distinguished mathematicians. That's not for me to say, but thank you. First, as a mathematician will say, there are some distinguished mathematicians. Two of them worked, two distinguished mathematicians who worked on film. And Ken Ono and Manju Bhargava. And I would like to ask them about their participation in the movie, because I think it's very important that the film actually is so authentic. I think it's also great, something to say about Matt Brown, about the director and the crew. It's so important, it's clear how much effort was put into making this authentic. And I think it's very important, because otherwise, if it doesn't come across as real, then it's very difficult to then believe the rest of the story. You see, it's like you make a movie about Mozart, but then you have Mozart playing piano, and then he plays the wrong note, and everybody's like, no, that's not Mozart, right? So if you have a Ramanujan and Hardy in your film, you better make sure they know what they're talking about. And I think the actors did a fantastic job, and the director did a fantastic job. But I think we have to acknowledge also two mathematicians who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to really make sure that everything worked so well in unison. So I want to ask first maybe Ken to tell us a little bit about your experience in that work.
So I have to begin by saying I'm an accidental associate movie producer. It was completely out of the blue a little over 2 years ago when Matt Brown sent me an email, and he said he wanted some help with this film that we've been hearing about for 8 years. And so I was You know, I check my email very regularly, so I probably wrote back within 2 or 3 minutes, just absolutely excited. It's not every day that a math professor is asked to be part of a Hollywood production. So, what Edward is asking about, I think this is a very important film for many reasons. We've already heard about the importance of education, the importance of recognizing and discovering outliers, the undiscovered talent. And I'm proud to be part of this film because it was important to Matt, and I hope everyone here appreciates this. It was important to him to get the math right at every level. That scene where Devika is holding the Ramanujan's notebook. Every single page of that notebook is an actual page from Ramanujan's notebook. Every single page, despite the fact only 2 or 3 pages appear. Even the corrections that Hardy makes on the props. Actually, Matt asked me to find Ramanujan's mistakes. Even those are real. And so the mathematics, the lines, the training, and the rehearsals with the actors, helping them portray mathematicians. I think you know, Matt produced a great film, and I think the mathematical community will embrace that. It's genuine.
Manju.
Yeah, this film really is a dream come true for mathematicians all over the world. We grew up, mathematicians of course learned about Ramanujan's story very early on, and it was an inspiration to both Ken and me, of course, when we were growing up. But all mathematicians know of the story, and it's always been a dream that the rest of the world gets to know this incredible story, and so we're very grateful to the whole team here for bringing that story to the world through film. It was really incredible to work with Matt and the actors who were always interested in getting everything exactly right. They used to ask us questions that we never even thought of ourselves. Things like Jeremy was asking always, when you're working on a proof, you mathematicians, when do you get excited? What is the moment? Is it when you have the idea? Or is it when you're writing it out? Or is it when you put that final line? And we were like, well, we don't know, we just do it. We don't know. And I know you took surveys, and I was always asking around, and the consensus was that it's when you have the idea that's the most exciting moment, when you had a mathematician think about it. And you can see that there were many takes, and then we were sitting in the editing studio, and Jeremy makes sure that the idea moment is when his eyes twinkle, and Dave does the same. And they really paid attention to details like that, so that when now mathematicians are watching it, we actually feel like, yeah, that's exactly what we experience when we're working with other mathematicians. So it's really authentic, not just in the mathematics, but the way it's portrayed, the way we view it as an art form, the way it's a pursuit of beauty, and when we have that really beautiful idea, that's when they get excited, and when they have this feeling of enlightenment, and all those things are portrayed in such an accurate way that it's the first time that a film has ever really done that.
I think so too, yes. And I like the way you use the word enlightenment, so that's very much, I think, that comes across in the film. And in fact, you know, I wrote down some quotes. At some point, Hardy asks Ramanujan, why do you do it, any of this? And Ramanujan says, because I have to. It's like, you know, asking Picasso, why you have already made so many paintings, so many drawings, why are you doing another one? Well, the point is, he has no choice. He has no choice. And that's just beautiful to see, because I think for people outside of mathematics, the impression perhaps is that we are this sort of like bookworms, like we're sitting around in this like rooms in like this very sterile environment, and we keep on thinking and thinking and thinking and writing and writing and writing, and then eventually, okay, so then we would be like computers, right? Because then we'd be like one line of code after another line of code. But in truth, it's not at all like this. Not all of us have such a special relationship with a goddess, you know. But we don't recognize it as such, perhaps, because we actually do. That moment when we have that moment of enlightenment, that moment of insight, is the moment when thinking stops in something else. We allow something else to come in. And it's so beautiful, but it's very hard to explain, because as soon as you start explaining, it kind of like dissipates. It's this perfume, which is... So Robert, I want to ask you. Yes, there you are.
It needs to be said, though, that those moments of enlightenment and sudden understanding follow hours and hours and weeks, very often, of hard, brutal work, immersing yourself in the details of the work in the same way that an artist immerses himself or herself in, you know, sketches or selecting a palette of colors. and going through all the hard, gritty work, you need to go through that first, typically, before the insights come. It's a precursor to it.
Right.
And of course, because they are so rare, they become so sweet.
But that's also, the work which goes to discover, to understand mathematics and to put oneself. It's like, you climb Everest, you have to do a lot of climbing, but then finally you get to this point, and then you're just one with that, right? And so, but same goes for, say, for you writing that book also. How much work has gone into this? How about making this film? How much work for each person on this stage? And, and I also want to say for Matt Brown to stick to his guns for 10 years. The courage it takes, and, and the producers as well. I
It was with the long journey. Ed, I was very lucky. I had a producer that allowed me to believe in my own ideas about how to make this film and not be swayed. At times, Ed and I were trying to find the money, and there was a financier at one point who offered us a chance to make the movie if we would only make Ramanujan fall in love with a white nurse. And we didn't do that.
A really sexy nurse.
So we did want to try to remain as authentic as possible, even if that meant it would be slightly less money to do it with or whatever. But we made every dollar go as far as we possibly could. And they encouraged that. We wanted to make a film that, while staying true to the mathematics, would hopefully. I don't think either of us are probably too great at math. I can't speak for Ed, but for myself, I can barely do the tip. So at dinner. So I wanted a movie that people could see these guys as artists, as I've come to see them, and I really do believe that they're artists. They were pure mathematicians, and it's almost ironic. At the end of the movie, it has a title card that says how these formulas from 100 years ago are being used for studying the behavior of black holes, which is a wonderful, amazing, incredible thing in and of itself, but that's not why they did it. And these were pure mathematicians. They're artists, and I came to appreciate that passion that they had in the way I have a passion for writing or for filmmaking, in the way that other people I know do for painting, or my brother does for music. And I think that we all can appreciate an artist's passion, and there's such an incredible journey between these two people, and the fact that, the film really is, at its core, a human story about the cost that comes when people wait out of fear to connect. And if anything, I hope people will open their hearts a little bit from the film and be open to recognizing talent. So.
I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between the two main characters in this film, because I think it's very important also here. Of course, Ramanujan in some sense is this sort of bright light, but Hardy is in some sense just as important to the story, right? And it's very interesting because it's almost like a left brain talking to the right brain of the same person, right? And it's you feel Hardy thinks that he has to teach Ramanujan something. Ramanujan should learn how to write proofs so that he can have this sort of bulletproof, papers which could be published and he could be accepted. But what we learn also in the story, that Ramanujan also teaches Hardy something. In fact, Hardy later on said that his work with collaboration with Ramanujan was the only romantic incident in my life. So that's also love. For him, for Hardy, who was sort of this very, reticent guy, very close to himself, very shy, kind of like shy, and for him to open up to this fellow, this young guy, and to be a mentor, teacher, almost like a father figure for him. That was also love between the two men, and I think it's beautiful. And so, like I said, love takes many different forms.
I'd love to hear Ken and Manjul about that, like the camaraderie of the mathematics world, and sort of how it's reflected here and what Edward's talking about. Go ahead.
Okay, well, please don't take this the wrong way, but I love my PhD students. It's one of the, not that way. It's one of the privileges we have as senior mathematicians. We get the opportunity to train young students who are 21, 22, and 23 and see them mature into professionals. In fact, one of the things I really love doing is not only just graduating my PhD students, but telling them, making it a very important point to note that you sound like a professor now. And how do you transition from taking tests to accepting the reality? My God, yeah, I'm like a professor now. It's hard to explain. It takes years, and you see a lot of that in this film, which is a testament to the authenticity of the film. But that's one of the reasons why I think we do what we do.
Yeah, collaboration is actually a very important part of mathematics nowadays. Bouncing ideas off each other until you come to a creative conclusion has become a very important part of mathematics. And that's actually one of the legacies of Hardy and Ramanujan and Hardy and Littlewood. It used to be that mathematics was an individual sport and people were competing with each other to prove results first. And Hardy and Littlewood and Hardy and Ramanujan, who of course were one of the greatest collaborations of all time, they really taught us that as well, that how much you can accomplish if you bring in your different skills and your different talents together. Kind of like musical collaborations. They had mathematical collaborations where they brought their individual talents, brought them together, and changed the world. And that's now become very standard in mathematics. This collaborative effort used to be an individual sport, now it's become a really collaborative science and a collaborative art. And that's part of their legacy as well.
Right, Manjul is absolutely correct. And we've actually experienced the growth of mathematical collaboration. One of the most important theorems that was proven in the last couple of years, headed by one of our friends, Terry Tao, probably had 70 or 80 mathematicians working in collaboration thanks to the internet. So the internet, things like Facebook, Math Overflow, they're helping us do our job. So so even though we may look very traditional with our Greek letters and our papers, we're certainly benefiting from, the Silicon Valley phenomenon.
It's a very nice scene in the film where Ramanujan goes into the chapel at Trinity College and grabs the toe of Isaac Newton. And it was, of course, Isaac Newton who spoke of standing on the shoulders of giants. And that is a great intellectual history. One of the marvelous things about the Hardy-Ramanujan relationship is that if you were a writer and you were inventing it, you would naturally assume that the Cambridge Imperial British character would be the sort of stand-fast figure who believed in order and rigor and God and church and all the rest of it, and the Indian would be the romantic revolutionary figure coming over. In fact, it was quite the reverse. That Ramanujan was a conservative in almost every sense, certainly in his religion, in his sense of hierarchy. He was a Brahmin, which is the highest caste in the Indian caste system, and Hardy was a member of the Apostles, which was the intellectual group at Cambridge, which later gave rise, of course, to the famous Cambridge Spies. It was intended to be progressive, leftish, doubtful, and of course the character of Bertrand Russell was in the film, also an atheist like Hardy. So they were very atypical in that sense of the British establishment. They were sort of allowed by permission into a place like Trinity because of their genius, because of their extraordinary abilities. And they were allowed, therefore, to speak against the First World War. Bertrand Russell, incidentally, I just thought I'd share this with you because it's one of the great things said by a non-religious person. It's so theological. He was attacked for his questioning of the First World War, and he got all kinds of letters, and one article in the Times thundered, how dare he, when the sacrifices are being made, our young men are going off and they're being killed. This terrible sacrifice, and he's mocking it or saying that it shouldn't be made. And he made this remarkable point that takes such extraordinary intellectual clarity, which is what he and Hardy stood for, clear thinking. He said, no, the sacrifice we're asking of our young is not to die for their country. That takes no moral decision whatsoever. We're asking them to kill for their country. And that is a monstrous thing to do. How brave he was. And these characters were like that. And Hardy was, so that little suggestion in the film that you managed to get in, obviously you can't get it all in, where the college are withholding Russell's lectureships and are threatening to do the same to Hardy. So they were, outside of mathematics, they were also quite brave, difficult, maverick people. It's important to remember. remember that. That's an important side.
I'm going to just try to
Just follow up quickly on
Go
this,
ahead.
because I think it's a very important point, which is that, but see, Stephen, you're right, but mathematics gives us a certain vantage point, which also makes us understand that we are all one, because there is only one mathematics. It doesn't change, it doesn't depend on religion, on your cultural background, on the skin color, and all the strife in the world we see today, just like 100 years ago, still our young ones go to die and to kill, right? Why? Because of the hatred of the other, the supposed other. But when you are a mathematician, there are no such divisions. You become aware that they are all created by the powers that be who divide and conquer. So in that sense, it is in that sense also that when more of us appreciate that, what mathematics for what it is, despite the terrible state of our math education, I have to say, when we actually realize that math is not this boring and lifeless and terrible stuff that they were force-feeding us at school, but it is this beauty, it is this love, that's what also will help us understand that all of those divisions are completely illusory.
Fantastic. I could listen to these guys all day, but I want to give everyone here like a chance. I think we have maybe time for just one or two. If anyone has a remarkable question. But first we'll hear from the producer.
I just wanted to thank Noah for inviting us to the festival. It's no accident that this film is opening in New York and LA, like most platform films do, but also in San Francisco. We were very determined that the film open here, because this is the center of the communication universe, in a sense. And what the film's about is something that I think this audience can relate to, and if the idea of this movie can be transmitted to the world, there's a chance this film can be seen by a lot of people, and that's why we're here. And thank you for having us.
My pleasure. Okay. We probably only have time for one, we'll see, but make it a good one. Who's got the mic? Great.
Thank you very much, Matt. First of all, as an atheist, I have to stand here and tell you that after seeing the beauty of this film, I have to concede that goddess Namagiri clearly spoke through you too. I have prayed to her on multiple occasions. But I do have a question, and that is that for some of us, looking back a decade or more ago, one can't help think back to that film Good Will Hunting and see that as a typical feeble attempt by Hollywood to pander, and you've gone way beyond that. Can you comment on that?
Well, I'm a Boston boy, so I have to kind of watch my tongue here. But I will say, in all honesty, it was motivation for me. It was motivation because I really felt like this story deserved to be told, and I never dreamed when I began. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I didn't know how difficult it would be, and I don't think Ed did either. And I think that, in a way, it just gets under your skin, and you're like, this story should be told, and why isn't it? And why is it okay that this other film was made, in that sense? So it was motivation, and I enjoy that film. I love my city, and I'm really proud, though, that we were able to make this film. So.
A career in diplomacy awaits you. We'll do one last, oh no, I gotta cut it off. All right, we're all set. Thank you so much to our panelists, to the Sloan Foundation. Thank you all for coming.